In this video, we'll go over all of the new cards announced from the past week and try to compress it into a bite-sized video. Okay, since there wasn't really anything released in the past week, I'm just gonna go over a few more cards that I missed from the previous week. First up, we've got Mekk-knight Avram, another level 4 2000 attack normal monster beater. Nothing much to say about that. World Legacy Nightmare is a field spell card for the Troy Mare Link monsters. Its first effect is battle damage you would take from co-linked monsters becomes 0, which isn't very good. And its second effect is to either move a Troy Mare monster to another monster zone, or swap the places of 2 Troy Mare monsters, and only in the main monster zones. This would be a great effect to tag onto a good field spell card. As it stands now, it doesn't really do anything, and I can't see too many players wanting to use it. World Legacy Echo, a counter trap card with the effect of being able to negate the effect of a spell, trap, or monster effect if you control co-linked monsters and destroy that card. The effect itself is good, don't get me wrong, but the activation requirement requires an already set up board, which puts it squarely into a win more kind of card, and probably won't see play over Solemn Morning. World Legacy Awakening, a trap card which allows you to link summon a monster. The good thing about this is that obviously it will allow you to link summon during your opponent's turn. There are trap cards that allow you to synchron XYZ summon during your opponent's turn, Wonder XYZ and Urgent Tuning, that were only ever played in gimmick decks. It's nice to finally have the option to link summon during your opponent's turn for, say, like Psy-frame type decks who summon monsters during your opponent's turn who don't survive until your turn. But just like the other two, who do the new type of summoning during your opponent's turn, it probably won't be used very regularly. Maybe. Link summoning is a lot more easier to do than both Synchro and XYZ summoning, or Exceed summoning, so I could be wrong about that. Limit Code is a trap card with a once per duel effect, so you know it's gotta be good. What the card does is allow you to special summon a Code Talker monster from your extra deck, at the cost of just having any number of Cybers monsters in your graveyard. And based on the number of Cybers monsters in your graveyard, the card gains counters, which you need to remove during the end phase to keep the card alive. Now, at first glance, you think, oh, you can only use this in Cybers decks, until you remember that more than half of all Link monsters are Cybers type, so it can be splashed into just about any deck. Its ability to summon a monster straight from the extra deck is really good, especially if you use it on something like Decode Talker, to then use it as materials for an easy Link 4 monster or something. Cybersal Cyclone, a quick play spell card with an incredibly convoluted effect. Basically, you can banish a Link monster from your graveyard to destroy an opponent's Link monster with the same number of arrows. And if the card you banished from your graveyard was Cybers type, you can also destroy a face-up spell or trap card your opponent controls. Not even just any spell or trap card, it has to be a face-up one. Terrible card. Pack filler, I'll probably make a deck with it in the future. Yashiki Warashi, a new hand trap in the same vein as Ghost Ogre and Ash Blossoms. Its effect is basically like a Necro Valley type effect of if someone tries to move card out of the graveyard by special summoning it, adding it to their hand, or banishing it, you can discard this card to negate it. Seeing as Necro Valley is like the go-to field spell in lockdown decks, this is a pretty good hand trap as well, and we'll probably see some play, especially since it's a tuner like the other ghost hand traps and can be used in needle fiber plays. Altergeist Pixiel, a new Altergeist card with the effect of being able to tribute itself to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and then add one Altergeist monster among them and send the rest to the graveyard. Seeing as the card can't special summon itself, I don't see this card at first glance as being all that good. But then again, I don't know the Altergeist decks very well at all, so I could be wrong about that. Trickstar Bouquet. I think that's how you say it. It's spelled Bouquet, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Bouquet or something like that. Anyways, a new Trickstar quick play spell card that allows you to return a Trickstar monster you control to your hand to increase the attack of another monster on the field equal to that Trickstar's attack, which is not very good. Trickstar Delfiendium, a new Link 3 Trickstar monster with the requirements of 2 or more Trickstar monsters. If this card points to a Trickstar monster when it declares an attack, you can add a number of your banished Trickstar cards to your hand equal to the number of Link monsters your opponent controls. Then gain 1,000 attack for each card. This is an incredibly specific and convoluted effect. Do Trickstars banish themselves a lot or something? I mean, as far as I know, they don't really, but they do banish a trap card quite often, which I'd assume is probably what this card is all about, is just recovering that one trap card. It doesn't seem very good outside of its very specific requirement of activation, but seeing as it is an extra deck monster, that's fine, since you can choose to go into that if this situation comes up. You can kind of give it a little pass on being a little bit more specific than normal if it's an extra deck monster. Altergeist Emulelf, I have no idea how to say that, is an Altergeist trap monster with the effect of protecting your other Altergeist trap cards from targeting or destruction effects. One of the few things I do know about Altergeist is that they have pretty good continuous trap cards, so giving it some archetype specific protection seems decent. Even if you can remove the protection by simply attacking over this card, since its stats are kinda low. But there is also other Altergeist trap cards that can protect this card, so that's probably not a super big issue. Watchcat is a more useful watchdog effect, as it can special summon itself from your hand if you have no monsters, and then set a continuous spell card from your deck by banishing himself during the end phase. Its effect is still a little restricting, but it's so much better at searching a continuous spell card than Watchdog that I'll probably actually use this card in gimmick decks that revolve around specific continuous spell cards. Darklord Divinity, a new Darklord trap card with the effect of sending a Darklord from your hand or field to the graveyard to negate the effects of a monster on the field. Also, you gain life points equal to its attack. Now, seeing as a lot of the Darklord monsters want to be in the graveyard, and others can use their archetype specific spell and trap effects from the graveyard, its effect is actually pretty good within its archetype. And the little life point boost is neat too, since a lot of the Darklord effects require you to pay 1,000 life points to activate. Link Streamer, a new Cybers card with the effect of, if a Cybers monster is summoned to your side of the field, you can special summon a token once per turn. Now, seeing as most Link monsters are Cybers type, it could see play in non-Cybers decks as well. Maybe. Otherwise, it seems pretty standard. Not bad, but not super good either. Prompt Horn, a Cybers card with the effect of being able to tribute a level 4 or lower Cybers card to special summon any number of Cybers normal monsters from your deck or graveyard whose total levels equal the tributed monsters. And they're all banished during the end phase. With a level 1 normal monster Cybers card added recently, you could potentially get 3 cards out of that one tribute, which is pretty good. Transfamiliar, a monster with no stats that once per turn allows you to move a monster you control to another main monster zone. Yeah, that's not very good. Designator from the Grave, a quick play spell card that allows you to banish a card from your opponent's graveyard to negate the effects of monsters with that name for the rest of the turn, which I think works on hand traps. So if you really hate hand traps, you've got a good counter for it now. World Legacy End. A World Legacy continuous spell card with the unique distinction of only being able to control one of these cards at a time, so you know its effect must be good. Its effect is that if a link monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect or battle, which is by far the best kind of floating requirement to have, by the way, you can special summon a World Legacy monster from your hand or deck in defense position. Seems like a good floater card. I'd expect all World Legacy players to use it. Staredown. A continuous spell card that allows you to move a monster into the zone above the extra monster zone when you summon a monster from the extra deck. Or move one of your monsters in front of the extra monster zone if your opponent does the same. And just like the card art shows, this effect actually works well with Akashic Magician, who can bounce cards in the zone she points to on summon. Pint-sized Priest Hidaruma, a Fire Beast Warrior Link 2 monster with the requirements of 2 Beast, Beast Warrior, Wing Beast type monsters to bring out. So finally, a Link Fire Fist support card, and Fire Kings. First being that it gains 100 attack for each Beast, Beast Warrior, and Wing Beast on the field. Effect 2 is that it can double Cyclone. And Effect 3 is that it returns a Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast type monster from your grave, or that is banished, when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. Which is pretty unique. You don't usually see these kinds of effects include banished cards as well. Obviously, this card is pretty good in decks that can use it. Outroll of the Haunted Sea. This card allows you to special summon a Beast Warrior type monster from your hand, with the same level and attribute as this card. The catch being that there are no other level 3 water type Beast Warrior monsters in the game. So its first effect is that when it's summoned, you can change its level and attribute to that of another Beast Warrior monster in your graveyard. Also, you can only special summon other Beast Warrior type monsters when you use its effect. Yeah, this is not a very good card, considering all it does is special summon a monster from your hand. Might be a lot more useful if it's special summoned from the graveyard or somewhere else. Yajirovader. This is a unique card. It can only be initially summoned to the middle monster card zone. Once per turn, you can move it over one zone. Also, if your opponent summons a monster, you can move this card to one zone closer to that monster zone, and then destroy all other cards in the same column as this card when it moves. This seems like a neat effect to build the deck around. Light of Sekka. This spell card is one that you'll see people build decks around in the future because of its good effect. So basically, if you have no spell or traps in your graveyard, you can draw 2 cards. Then you can't use any other spell or trap cards for the rest of the duel, except this card and its effects. Its second effect allows you to banish it from the graveyard to do a card trader effect, which is also good. This card reminds me a lot of Treacherous Trap Hole, which was usually run in decks back in the day that didn't run other trap cards, like Frog Monarchs, because it had a good effect, but you couldn't really play any other trap cards with it. And with how prevalent hand traps are, you're not really losing much if you run a deck that doesn't rely on spell or traps to do what it does. Ruthless Drop Off. A counter trap card that allows you to banish a card if your opponent adds it from their graveyard or from their side of the field to their hand, and all other cards with the same name. Seems like a neat side deck option and not very splashable into normal decks, as it's very specific. Shrub Serpent. If this card is destroyed or banished by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck, which is like pretty good, since there are some really good extra deck cards this card can bring out, like Cyber Nova Dragon, the Last Warrior from Another Planet, or Naturia Exterio. This will be a fun card to play around with. Mamemaki. This card allows you to discard cards equal to the level of a monster your opponent controls. Then, draw that many cards. Then return the monster to your opponent's hand. This is a good effect. It's basically like a personal card destruction and a compulse put into one. This card seems like it's a must in decks that want to set up their graveyard. Boycotton. A level 4 monster with a really high defense that has the effect of you take any battle damage that would have been taken by your opponent if something rams into it. And also, if you take any battle damage from its effect, it returns to your hand. So basically 2 negative effects for being a level 4 high defense monster. This card screams created to be added to Duel Links because it's kinda bad. Rapid Red-Haired Mare. This level 5 monster can special summon itself into a column with no other monsters, and is destroyed if any cards are placed in that column. Also, you can have this card's attack to attack directly that turn. Even with its restrictive effect, it actually seems pretty useful. An easy to special summon level 5 monster is greatly appreciated, as most other level 5 generic special summon monsters require you to have no other monsters on the field. And the ability to attack directly can situationally be useful to attack for that last 1,000 points of damage, just in case. Selective Reborn. A monster reborn light card, in which you can choose 3 monsters from your graveyard, and your opponent chooses one of them to be special summoned, while the others get banished. Which is still 1 monster from your graveyard for the cost of banishing 2 other monsters. Seems pretty neat, as special summoning cards from the graveyard is always good, especially if they're from a spell card. But the random nature of it does limit its usefulness significantly. And with that, I'll see you all next week.